Okay, we are live. I have my dog Calvin here because my wife's not home, so he wants to hang out with us for at least the time being. And then, even more importantly, I have my brother Jeremy, who has actually been on the channel in a couple videos. You did a Black Friday haul with me
Yep.
a couple years ago, and then last year we showed off your movie collection as well. And then I
Yeah.
got my buddy Josiah. I put his YouTube handle up on here because I want to promote his YouTube channel as well. I finally got you to start a YouTube channel this year.
Yeah.
So you've been doing some cool videos so far. So anything else you guys want to share about yourself? Starting with you, Jeremy.
Um, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I can't. I guess the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is my collection has still continued to grow since the last time I had my video with you on the channel.
Yeah, when we showed it off, you had about 500. So now you got more than that.
Yeah, got over 600 now. So
nice.
Yeah,
I still haven't reached the 500 threshold point.
Yeah. So now I have more room to expand now that I have the apartment. So all my stuff's throughout the apartment.
Yeah. So one of these days I'll get you to get a YouTube channel so we can get you some videos and all that kind of stuff. So Josiah, why don't you tell us quick about your channel and your Instagram and stuff like that if people want to follow you over there.
Let's see. Official Yoshas is my Instagram. Yoshai is my YouTube channel. I haven't made a video in a couple weeks, but I've been pretty busy, so I got a couple ideas, so I'll probably start working on that pretty soon. And yeah, that's about it.
That's cool. Yeah, I got some ideas too, but nothing short term on my channel. It's all like the end of the year stuff, like top 10s, favorites of the years, and then I do a like updated collection every year and stuff like that. So, all right, it looks like we got at least one person who just hopped in here. So, welcome to anyone who's checking out the stream. I will give a quick warning in case you didn't catch it in the video name. I don't remember if I put it in the description too, but there will be a spoiler-filled discussion as we're talking about the new Spider-Man No Way Home. We all saw the movie over this past weekend, the past few days, and loved it. And I came up with this idea last night and texted them both this morning, some of them this afternoon, and said, hey, you want to hop on a live stream and talk about Spider-Man? So we were going to talk about the spoilers, some quick reviews, our favorite parts of the movie, what we think's next, that kind of thing. So looking forward to this conversation. We'll probably talk for about an hour or so, maybe half hour if we run out of stuff to talk about, because not too much happens in this movie. It's pretty uneventful. So
yeah.
So starting things off, I'll start with you, Josiah, since you actually posed this question to me last night. Let me put this up on screen here. What would you say for describing this movie in 3 words?
I think basically like what you said in the when we were talking about this, or at least in your letterbox reviews, like everything we wanted. I mean, like it wasn't. I think go with like diving in with all the fan theories and rumors. I guess it wasn't surprising that stuff is true, but it was just like what I wanted. So I think this movie is just like everything that I wanted from this movie. So.
What about you, Jeremy? Did you ever come up with a sentence or a few words?
I came up with a couple things. Yeah, obviously it had its comedic parts in it because it's Marvel. I felt like this movie had a bit more of like a serious tone in it, especially towards like the middle and end. Seeing like where Tom Holland, I guess I should say, because they're all multiple Peter Parkers.
Yeah, where Peter Parker ends up.
But yeah, so kind of where his character ends up. And like the mentorship that he has throughout it. And then for me, obviously it had its surprising parts because I tried to avoid as many trailers and spoilers as I could. So I tried to not find out if there was multiple Spider-Man or whatever else in this. So yeah, it was definitely surprising for me.
Yeah. Is that all 3 words? Comedy?
Yeah.
Surprising, serious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as Josiah mentioned, my 3 words I used to describe it was everything we wanted or everything I wanted, because it absolutely was. Josiah froze up there. I wonder if we lost him, but he should be able to hop back in.
Didn't know if he fell asleep.
Either that or he's over there meditating on the words you just said. So yes, everything I wanted for sure, and I definitely agree with you on like the serious tone of the movie. I really liked and appreciated that, because sometimes, as much as I love the jokes and humor in the Marvel movies, sometimes the jokes are like, you kind of took away from a really good moment there. So there's times where I don't always appreciate that, but most of the time the jokes land. But I think, like you said, they had a really good balance of humor, serious, like story, like really, really flowed well. So let's get that one off screen. Now we definitely lost Josiah. He should be able to hop back in now as long as he's got the link.
Okay.
So quick thoughts and reviews, since we already kind of started talking about it. Quick thoughts, we kind of already talked about in our 3 words, but is there anything else you wanted to kind of add outside of those 3 things you mentioned?
Yeah, I really liked the final like confirmation of ties to, like we were talking about before we went live, with Daredevil and the different characters that they definitely confirmed that are in the same universe within this. So
yeah,
we just started quick thoughts and reviews, so Jeremy's just sharing his quick thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. And then I really appreciated like the Tobey Maguire like mentorship through this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because where we finished with the third one, which I need to rewatch those because it's been a really long time, but where we finished with the third one with Tobey Maguire was he was kind of like going through his like soul searching journey at the end. Obviously with Venom, it had some influence with him. But now we're kind of like seeing that he's got it all like figured out for the most part, and he kind of knows, you know, what he needs to be doing for Tom Holland's Peter Parker. So
yeah. If you were, have you contemplated the movie long enough to give it a quantifiable review of like out of 5 or 10 stars? Either of you?
I have not.
4.5. I think
I gave it 4.5 as well.
Yeah,
because I feel like
I have not.
For the most part, I find it hard to give a movie a perfect score just after watching it once. Because I feel like, especially in a movie like this, there's so much you miss as much as you're like eyes glued to the screen the whole time. Like you're gonna miss stuff.
Yeah,
so I feel like
agree.
Unless it's like, you know, you're just absolutely floored by it. I mean, I don't blame anyone who gives it a perfect score because it absolutely is a great movie. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 as well. So other quick thoughts. You talked about the whole mentorship. I think, Jeremy, you mentioned of the other Peter Parkers and Spider-Man. And I think that was, I'm just going to hop to favorite parts of the movie because this is probably where we're going to talk the longest. One of my favorite aspects of the movie probably was the fact that they actually played a mentorship for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, because they very easily could have just brought those actors in and had them come in like either for the final fight or had them just like pop in and be like, oh yeah, here's what you need to do, see you later kind of thing. But they actually like came in beside him, they mentored him, and they each were very distinct in their abilities. I think I was talking to Barbie about it on the way home last night of like, they each have their own skill sets and they actually like got to show that skill sets where like Tom Holland,
when they're in the
Spider-Man,
science lab at the school.
Yeah, right.
They each broke off in their own
skills.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Spider-Man is really techie and stuff like that because of like, you know, him being under Iron Man. And then Andrew Garfield is really into like the whole kind of like bioscience and stuff like that, like biology and that kind of stuff. Whereas Tobey Maguire's was much into like chemistry and that kind of thing. So I thought they really had them each stand out well because this movie very easily, like, I feel like it's almost the Spider-Man, it's almost the end game for Spider-Man, in that they like they bring all of these characters from the past 20 years back into something like this, where it very easily kind of like almost like Infinity War very easily could have felt like a crowded movie, but everyone had their moment to shine, and very much similarly, probably almost even better in this movie of each character had their moments to shine. So besides that, do you want to add anything to that or any other favorite parts of the movie?
For me, I think I did like all of it, but I did like some of the action in the movie because like I felt like in the MCU so far, Tom Holland hadn't gotten like a fight like that. You know, I mean, with like Thanos and some of the other aliens at the beginning of Infinity War, like there was like Iron Man there and all that, but like in like the Happy's apartment, they all just kind of like jumped him at the same time. Like Lizard just runs out, throws him down there. Green Goblin starts like whooping on him, and I kind of forgot like because I didn't get a chance to rewatch Spider-Man 1, but just like how strong the Green Goblin actually is. And I think I said that to you, Austin, was like I feel like the Green Goblin was like maybe the Joker in Batman Beyond, the movie where he fought Batman in the past, so he's not surprised by any of the tricks. Like, I think Tom Holland gets like knocked out the window and he like webs him, and he just grabs the webs and just like yanks him back up, because it's like, I fought Spider-Man before, you know, I know everything that you might try to think to do. And
no,
so
that's a
it was
good
just
comparison.
it was definitely like an interesting like aspect. And I do like how just like the interactions with some of the villains, and like I pointed out to you how like all of them have like connections to Oscorp in some way, except for maybe Sandman. I don't think he became Sandman at Oscorp.
His was more just with like the military kind of thing, I think.
You're right, but everybody else
like
was like, "Oh, I used to work at Oscorp," or you know, I was a scientist at Oscorp. But it's just like, you know, Oscorp doesn't exist here. But that was kind of like nice how they all kind of like. And then I like the line where Lizard says like, "Oh, Max," so he's like, "Do I die? Like, did I die at some point?" So.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say, as much as I still at this point think Spider-Man 2 might still be my favorite Spider-Man movie, because that movie just has like, it's just like flawless in everything it does, I think. And I even go back and forth between the original Spider-Man 1 and 2 of being my favorite of the two, but I think I always land on Spider-Man 2 because Doc Ock is such a complex character and villain. And I was most looking forward to Alfred Molina's performance in No Way Home as that character, because he was my favorite villain growing up. But I actually came out of the movie liking Green Goblin even more. That Doc Ock definitely had a bunch of screen time and was a really good character, but I found Green Goblin even better. Like you said, like you forgot how powerful he is. Like I almost felt like he was almost more powerful because he went into this movie, like you said, understanding all of Spider-Man's tricks and powers and abilities and stuff like that. So he was probably my favorite villain from this movie. What about either of you? Who's your favorite villain from this one? Because there was a lot to choose from.
Well, I would say like Doc Ock wasn't even a villain really in this one.
Right, he was barely a villain. Yeah,
so
he was really only a villain in the parts we saw in the trailer. That's about it.
Yeah, and I think I was looking going into the movie. I was looking forward to seeing Electro the most, because they just seemed like super cool, like based off the trailers and everything, and like how he had like that arc reactor. I was like, oh man, that's like a cool little, you know, because like the only thing they have in the Sam Raimi universe and like the Mark Webb universe is just Oscorp, but it's like the MCU has so much more like technology that he was like, whoa, you know, and just
something's different here, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing, and how like just his design of his like character was like super cool.
Yeah, well, and I think he had the most opportunity for kind of like a rework and growth within this movie, because many people consider his movie to be like the weakest of the Spider-Man movies, probably, or at least one of the weakest. So I think he had the most interest of like people hoping to turn his character around, kind of thing, and people's thoughts on it. So I think that was really, really cool. And I think they did a really good job of making him still honor what he was in his previous performance in Amazing Spider-Man 2, but also giving him new layers and new complexity to it as well.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
I would say it'd be hard to choose a villain other than the Green Goblin, because I would say he was the main villain in this one.
Really, in the end, yeah, he's kind of
I would say he had to be my favorite villain in this one.
Yeah, which reminds me that pretty much reminded me that my theory going into the movie, that at least I told people about, was I thought that, you know, all these villains are going to come here. Doctor Strange is going to be like, you know, figure this out, fight them, get them back to their universes, kind of thing. And Peter would have to fight them for a little while. Then he'd kind of sympathize and empathize with them and want to help them, which that up to that point I was right. But then I thought in the end that it wasn't going to be Doctor Strange, because that was my theory. I thought it was going to be someone else impersonating him, or some like multiverse version of him. And I thought he was going to end up being the villain in the end, and they were all going to have to like team up for it. So I was like half right. I was like right up until a point with that theory. So did you guys have any theories that you went in with that either ended up being right or wrong?
I mean, I think the biggest theory I had was about Andrew Garfield saving Zendaya based off the shot. I was like, oh, he's going to be the one to like swoop in and save her. Like, I think that was probably the only major theory I had.
They were setting up,
Right, me too. And like, I think that might have been it. That's the only thing I really thought was going to happen. I mean, aside from like Toby and Andrew even being in the movie at all, I think that was the only thing I had, could think of.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, because right when I saw the trailer for it, I'm like, oh, he's definitely going to be in this movie now. Because I was like, there's no way they would set that shot up, and then not have him like
the
redeem
same
himself.
Kind of setup. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was the moment. I'll confess this here live on a stream in front of potentially whoever's watching. I actually teared up at that moment when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man saved Zendaya's character and was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like,
everybody was
Barbie
like,
looked over at me
and
she's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, "Yes, it's emotional. This means a lot to him."
Because
if you go back,
since when you cry in movies, I'm like, look, I'm a softie now. I cry in all kinds of movies. You just don't see it. I'm good at hiding it usually.
If you go back to the Amazing Spider-Man, like after that happened to Gwen Stacy, the whole rest of the movie was emotional, and I would say like most of us got emotional at the end of that one.
And as much as I do really like the Amazing Spider-Man, and there's a lot of aspects of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 that I also really like, even though it's not a great movie. But you can't deny how perfect that scene was with Gwen Stacy's death. Like that was like the best executed moment of those movies.
And I like how
probably
when he like shoots the web and it looks like a hand like reaching out. Like it was just such a well-made scene.
It was this was both poetic and like well done and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other favorite aspects or moments? I mean, there was a ton.
I would say
I do like a Flash Thompson at the beginning, and how he's like, "Oh hey," like, and then how they said like we didn't get in because we're actually friends with Spider-Man. They're like that word, like actually. He was like, "Don't like you may be able to say to everyone, look, I'm Spider-Man's friend, but like we know that, and like the school actually knows that we are actually friends with Peter Parker." And then I think I told you, Austin, that. Like my favorite like shot of the movie, like it'd be a great wallpapers, was like right after Aunt May dies, and then there's just that huge screen of J. Jonah Jameson just like ripping Spider-Man apart, and it's like raining, and he's just
all
standing
like
there, just
and stuff.
Just staring at this. I was like, that's probably my favorite shot in the movie. And then the second one would be when he's going to the woods to see Electro, and he's swinging between like the electrical towers. That was just a nice shot.
My favorite shot. I love that shot of him with Jameson, but I think my favorite shot was when all the Spider-Men land on the Statue of Liberty and like do a quick pose together.
Oh
like,
yeah,
can we just hold that shot for like an hour and like take this in? Oh man, what was some of your favorite shots, Jeremy?
I think one of them was, well, not really a shot, but I guess a scene,
like moment scene.
Was when again they were at the school in the lab, and Ned was like, Peter, and then they're like, they all responded at the same time.
What?
And then he was like, Peter Parker, and they're like, yeah, we're all Peter Parker.
That was great.
I loved that.
And then I think another like interesting part was in the end fight sequence that Tom Holland like kind of rallied them all together and became the leader of the team, even though he was the one receiving.
I was really surprised at that. I thought Tobey Maguire would take charge because he's like the OG.
And then he was like, "Oh, I don't mean to brag, but I was on the Avengers." I'm like, "What is that? A band?
Yeah,
like,
what are the Avengers? Is that a team? Or is that a band?
I think if there's one thing, one thing I would have liked to see, it would have been just a line, but like if Tobey Maguire had realized that the Lizard was Kurt Connors, and he'd be like, "Oh, great! I'm glad that my Kurt Connors never tried to do something like this," because he'd be like, "Oh, Dr. Connors, like what happened? Like what did you do?" It would have been nice to see, but beyond that, it was just great.
Yeah, I don't think. Speaking of like when they first came in, the Spider-Man, I don't think it was absolutely necessary, but I do think it would have been really cool musically if when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man came in, we got like a subtle music cue of like his Spider-Man theme, and then when Tobey Maguire like steps through the portal, we got like his music cue. Because I don't know if you guys saw, like there was a bunch of TikToks of everyone like, if Tobey Maguire, like if this music starts playing, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right?
Like the Tobey Maguire, Danny Elfman theme, and I'm like, I probably would have just burst into tears just hearing that, just because I love that theme so much. Like it's still my favorite Spider-Man theme.
Yeah.
So
well, they could have done
that
something
was awesome.
Like with what they did in Dune, that they had certain scores when certain actors and like that would have been really cool to have seen that.
Yeah.
And then like when Andrew Garfield came in, I literally got like goosebumps and like chills the first.
Me too.
Like, because by the time Tobey Maguire came in, I'm like, okay, I already knew you were coming in after I saw Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
But
the thing was that, like, I told Austin, like, my sister, for somehow she managed not to see any of the trailers or any of the clips or anything. So she was like completely blind the whole movie, and I was looking at her like, how is that even possible? Because like I knew it was going to happen. Like I think
for the
like
past 3 months.
Right. I think before, like at the bridge scene, because I seen the trailers, I was like, Dr. Octopus was about to come, and I didn't know that she hadn't seen the trailer, so maybe I spoiled that part for her. But like the rest of it, she was just like, "What?" I was like, "You didn't expect this to happen? Like how?"
I just wish we could have actually like experienced the movie, not even knowing like any of the theories and stuff. Like as much as it was still amazing in that moment to actually see those theories come true and what we hoped it was. Like, can you imagine how much more like amazing it would have been for that to like for us to like have no clue of like what it actually was? Because I heard that the original plan for this movie was to keep the whole multiverse thing of bringing even all the villains back a secret. And I'm like, how do you even market that movie? But
you're right.
I think if they had done that, then people really would have thought that the Spider-Man weren't going to be in this one.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that they said the multiverse, then everyone's like, they have to be. So.
Yeah.
Because for a split second, I forgot that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to move on. But
I was just going to say, for a split second, I forgot that Sam Raimi didn't direct this because I was like, oh man, there wasn't a Bruce Campbell cameo, but I was like, wait, that's probably going to be in Doctor Strange 2 because that's the one he's directing.
Yeah,
so like,
probably. Yeah. Well, and you know what? Barbie and I watched Spider-Man 2 the other day because she hadn't seen Spider-Man 2 or 3, and we were watching the credits, and I think I texted you, Josiah, and I was like, oh, the opening credits to Spider-Man was just like mind blowing. Like it's just so good. But I was like, I didn't even catch that Kevin Feige was a producer on the old Spider-Man movie. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Wow.
It said like Sam Raimi and Kevin Feige or something like that. So I need to double check it to be sure, but I'm pretty sure I saw at least Feige, and I'm like, there's not many other Feiges out there associated with Marvel. So I thought that was pretty cool. But before, I did want to see if there was any kind of like potential weaker elements. But before we do that, one more thing I did want to mention. There was another one of my favorite parts of this movie is we talked about the whole mentorship of both of the other Spider-Men with Tom Holland's character. And I think one of the best things that this movie pulled off was not only making them like actual supporting characters with their own arcs within this movie, but they actually got like closure in their own universe and for their movies where like we talked about the whole saving Tom Holland's Mary Jane of like, that was a huge moment for him because he got to do something he failed to do in his own universe. And then we got to find out about Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man that he actually did find out a way to make it work with Mary Jane, and they have like, you know, a complicated but actually like a working relationship. So I thought it was really cool that Spider-Man 4 never happened with Tobey Maguire. So we never really got full closure with that. But we actually get that in this movie. And then same thing with Andrew Garfield. We never got a Spider-Man 3 with him. So we actually got closure for his character within this movie too. So that was another one of my favorite aspects, I think.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. This has been great, but I do got to get going. So
yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining. You wanted to duck out before we talk about any bad things, right?
I think the only thing I did hear was like people saying that. Yeah, I think maybe a gripe some people had is like how when Doctor Strange did the thing, how his body was still able to like move. I think like some people like had felt like that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but and then Ned just having it somehow have just magic powers,
all of a sudden just because they needed it. Yeah, I could see some minor complaints like that. Yeah. Alrighty, well,
I'll see you guys later.
Thanks for coming in.
No problem. See you guys.
See ya.
Alrighty, cool. So let's talk about any potential weaker elements. We talked about this a little bit before we went live, but before I mentioned that there was any weaker elements, was there anything you were like even mildly critical on, or were you still just kind of like basking in the glory of the movie?
Bit of both. I would say the only thing, and I don't feel like I had this complaint, but I know Andrea, my wife, she said that she felt like in the end fight sequence, it was hard to follow which Spider-Man was who. Which obviously falls into that they're all Spider-Man, so their suits are going to be similar, even though there's the subtle differences with that. So I would say like the thing that they did to work around that was luckily they had them pull their masks off every time they were talking, so you kind of knew
every time
like
they
who
were
was
actually
who.
talking. Yeah.
But when they were swinging around, like unless you could see like Andrew Garfield's like face basically because he has such the big
Right, because
eyes
he
on
has the
his
bigger
mask.
eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like you're kind of looking for like Tobey Maguire, like he has the older school kind of suit. And then if I'm remembering it right, Tom Holland kind of had like some gold
Yeah, he had
on
the gold
on the
spider on it from
yeah, on the
Dr.
spider.
Octopus's
So
nanotech. Yeah.
but obviously kind of when they're swinging around and fighting, there's a lot of CGI involved in that. So like their aspects of their suit aren't like perfectly in those shots. So
Yeah.
it can be a little bit hard to follow.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really say that's like like a fault on them because they're all Spider-Men, so they're not gonna. It's not like they were gonna have. Like I felt like it would have ruined the shot if Tom Holland had like his black suit on or something like that. Like because you finally have all three of them in a fight sequence together. You're gonna have them all in blue and
they
red.
all need to be in like their classic kind of suits. Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, yeah. I think we talked about right before we went live a couple, not necessarily weaker elements that I picked up on, but like I don't know if have you watched any like reviews from either critics or other YouTubers yet on, or have you just kind of gone off of yourself still?
I have not. No, I have not had time yet. So
no, that's fine. Yeah, we only just did it last night because we were up for a while. So I was like, let's watch Spider-Man reviews because I've been avoiding all of them because I was like, I want to know only what I know from the trailers going into this. So, but I saw some critical things of saying that like the first half, I don't even know if it was necessarily saying it was like rushed, but they kind of like really crammed in the first like 20 minutes. Like a lot of stuff really happened, and you can almost kind of like lose track of what's happening. But then once it hits that like beginning of the second act, everything just flows so well and so perfectly, you kind of forget about it. And I wouldn't even necessarily call it a criticism, but I almost forgot certain things happened at the beginning of the movie because so much took place in this movie. And like I said, that's not even like a criticism of like, oh, you know, so much happened, I can't remember it all. It's like, I mean, it's a very overwhelming movie in a lot of ways just because of all they packed in. But I think they did do it so well and really thought it out and stuff like that. I just like we said like so much so far, like I can't believe they actually pulled off everything in such a great way. Like everything honored what came before, but it also like moved forward in a really interesting way.
Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't say this is a weaker element, but this definitely was something that like helped them with the movie. And like again, we talked about this before we went live, was that they didn't have to do any backstory with anything because they had all the movies previous to this that like built up enough, and then this movie picked up like pretty much. I mean, it did pick up right after Far From Home.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's almost like a part two to that. So that was like a huge advantage for them because I feel like, I mean, that would have probably ate up what, like 20-30 minutes of screen time if they had to do backstory in this movie.
Yeah.
So
it probably would have at least made it another 20 minutes longer if they had to do all that.
Yeah, so that was a huge advantage, in my opinion, that they had going into this movie.
Yeah.
Which is unique because in a lot of movies, obviously, like not Marvel wise, because they kind of like have a timeline to them. But in a lot of movies, they have to cut a lot of stuff out because they are like, well, we have to put this backstory in, otherwise you're not going to understand.
Right. So we got to lose this because we need this backstory kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
I liked that they actually were like, you know what, we're bringing in these characters. Let's actually lean into the history that the audience has with these characters because it's there. So we don't have to worry about filling it in, you know, afterwards kind of thing, or at least currently in what's happening right now in this movie. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm sure there's criticisms out there, and you know, it's rare for any movie to be perfect, but we've also only seen this movie once each so far.
Yeah,
and like
that's why I feel like it's so hard to critique it when you've only seen it like once. Like to me, I'm like, oh, I really wouldn't want to talk about a movie unless I've seen it like at least 2 or 3 times, probably.
Yeah, and I think one of the people in our group we were with last night was like, what would you rate it so far? And I'm like, the movie ended like 4 minutes ago. Like I can't give the movie a rating yet. Like of any movie, I try to sit with it for at least like an hour or a couple hours.
I agree with that.
But especially for a movie like this that not only did a lot of stuff that I expected, did a lot of stuff that surprised me, not only did stuff for what's happening right now, but leaned back into a ton of history that we have with all these characters. Like it's not something that I can just be like, here's my score right off the movie before the credits are even done rolling, that kind of thing. So there's definitely like, even at this point, a lot to consider having only seen the movie once.
I would say the only thing now that we're talking about this, now I'm thinking about it. The only thing that was disappointing to me, which I said pretty much right after the movie, was the end credit scene had Venom, and then it had the trailer for the Doctor Strange movie. I had kind of wished they had something that was going to show us what was going to happen next for Spider-Man, because they did at the end, like he was kind of like going back to his roots. He went in like the Tobey Maguire style apartment, and like went to like an old school. He kind of had like a combination of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's
like
suit.
he had like the classic costume look kind of thing.
He had the classic costume, but it kind of had that like glossiness and shininess like Andrew Garfield's did. So I thought that was kind of cool that they combined that, but they just kind of like ended it there. That like Josiah was saying that they didn't really give answers with Ned, that they just kind of used his magic like ability in the movie, which I think they will use going forward, in my opinion. I feel like there's more to it than that, because
I think people have had theories about him having magic abilities before. Like I think some of the comics, I don't remember off the top of my head if he's a made up character just for the MCU or if he's in some of the different comic interpretations. But I think people have theorized his magic ability for some time.
Right, because Stephen Strange was like extremely surprised he was able to like do the magic that
these things and stuff.
It's not like he just because he had the ring thing that he was able to make the circles. That no, like he actually had the magic within him, and he was surprised he did. So I think they're gonna do something with that, and then another line or like part that kind of like sat with me that made me think about it was when MJ was like, "If you don't come and tell me after you make me forget, like I figured it out before, I'm gonna figure it out again.
I'll find out." Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, there's no way they would have had that line in there. And I'm not saying it'll be like the next Spider-Man movie or the next movie that he's in.
Then maybe at the end of the next trilogy or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, I think there's gonna be closure to it with that. And then I feel like part of it too could have been that he didn't want to just like, I don't know, he saw the damage that he did to her, so he needs to like heal from it. With that, and then he kind of needs to like, he feels like he needs to like win her back because he had hurt her. So I feel like he's still, in my opinion, he's still going to MIT. If the other two got into MIT, I would think he got into MIT as well.
Yeah, I don't know,
but they didn't clarify that.
Yeah,
so I don't know if he is.
Yeah, because I almost thought at the end here, I'll pop this up because it's kind of what we're talking about of what's next. It kind of seemed like not even just the fact that people forgot that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, but like they forgot about like Peter Parker entirely, because he had to like introduce himself to like MJ and Ned and stuff. So like they didn't even know who he was. So they did have to like, he did have to introduce himself to them. So, and I think of the fact that obviously his aunt's gone now, so he has to live on his own. But I think of like the whole thing of like what's next and whatnot. I think it's really cool that this is where we're going from here. Of like, I feel like I think one of the reviews I was watching said it too, of like he's actually Spider-Man now. Of like it was really cool to like for us nerds to get like, we got to see him in the MCU, and he's still in the MCU. We got to see him fight with the Avengers, fight Thanos, do all of these things. But now he's like actually Spider-Man, where like the city's against him. He's living in an apartment he can probably barely afford. He's having to make his own suit from scratch, and he has like no friends. So like I feel like that's like classic Spider-Man, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think totally it's really cool. I'm really excited of like what's next. Like as much as I love this movie and I hate to be like, what's next? Like I'm really excited of like the stepping off point of where we're leaving this character and what's next for him. That I know they've already said they're already working on what's going to be next for him, but I think it's really cool. And then now that we haven't even, I don't think we talked about it on the live yet, of like now that they're leaning into other Spider-Man characters, of like Daredevil being the lawyer that was going to help him and stuff. Now, granted, none of those people know who he is anymore, but at least that we're acknowledging these other Spider-Man characters that'll now like be in the thing going forwards. And then another thing of what's next of the mid-credit scene with Venom and Eddie Brock being in it. Now, I was initially confused by it. I think I've had my questions clarified.
Well, Eddie's not going to be
and stuff
in it, but Venom kind of like released a piece of himself.
Yeah, because when the scene first started, I was like, okay, so somehow Eddie Brock and Venom are stuck here. I was like, I'm kind of confused on that. But then it was revealed that, he got sent back to his universe, just like that. Like the timing was off on it, because I thought that was current, but it was actually when the final fight was happening. So I was But I was at first confused because I was like, well, Venom doesn't know that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, but I also hadn't seen Venom Let There Be Carnage yet, even though I know the end credit scene. And someone reminded me that in the end credit scene, Venom sees Spider-Man on the TV, and it's the whole like news thing from Jameson saying that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. So I was like, well, how is he here? Because all these villains that are here because they know Peter Parker's Spider-Man. I was like, okay, that clarifies it for me that at that, even though he wasn't necessarily out to get him, he knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, so that's why.
Well, and then it's playing to the Venom that was in the Tobey Maguire Venom, that they acknowledged that it's the same Venom character, because he said I had fought him before. So obviously the previous, so it's almost like Venom can, because he has like all this crazy wisdom and like knowledge.
Yeah, it's almost
that
like
has.
a 2-in-1 Venom kind of thing.
Yeah,
they combined that Sony version, or not Sony version necessarily, but the Eddie Brock or the Tom Hardy version with the Topher Grace version that we saw in the Raimi trilogy.
Right. So I think it's kind of cool that it kind of shows that he can kind of go across timelines without even like, I don't know.
Yeah, because he travels through space and all that kind of stuff, so he's obviously got more abilities than he's kind of let on up until this point.
Yeah. And then I think something really cool going forward, which I didn't think about it till now, was how we kept saying how Doctor Strange or Stephen Strange kept saying, I keep forgetting you're just a kid. I keep forgetting you're just a kid. I feel like we're going to have a really cool character arc for his character now, because everyone forgot who he was. So now going forward, they're going to look at him as Spider-Man, not Spider,
not
kid
a kid
or boy.
Yeah.
So if they do introduce him, not that they're going to like reintroduce him, but like reintroduce him back into like Marvel and the Avengers and all that kind of stuff, he's going to be looked at as more of like a man rather than this like innocent like kid that doesn't really know what he's doing and is insecure.
Iron Man introduced him and brought him in as a kid and was like the whole time Tony was with him, he knew he was a kid, and he treated him very much that way.
Right. So I think it'll be really cool to see that like he will be an actual like player within that now. And I mean, it just, because in was Civil War, when he took out Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that just showed how like strong he was and capable he was of taking down people. And he wasn't even like trying to hurt them necessarily. He was just trying to get away from them. So I think it'll be really cool going forward, seeing that he will be looked at in a different light than what he was.
Yeah. And I think we'll finally get kind of like classic New York City Spider-Man 2, because I don't remember if I told you, but I was telling Josiah when we were texting before, I think he had seen the movie at this point, but I had not. The one thing I think these movies have been lacking on most, being the Tom Holland ones, is we haven't gotten like classic New York City Spider-Man that we had with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. But I felt like the opening scene to this movie, No Way Home, where he's swinging all around trying to get away with Mary Jane, that felt very like classic New York City Spider-Man, because he's actually swinging around New York City. Since the first Homecoming, it's more of like a high school movie, and then Far From Home, he's in Europe most of the time. So it's like we didn't really get that classic swinging around the city, all that kind of stuff that we get with him. But we got that in the opening scene, and then I loved that we finished off the scene with him swinging around the city again when the snow and all that kind of stuff. That I was like, this is like Spider-Man. It really feels more like classic Spider-Man now. So I'm really hoping that they kind of keep that thread that we got in the beginning and the end of this one, especially in the end, and kind of keep that going forward. So I'm really excited about the future of it. Because like I said, that's kind of been my biggest gripe with these newer movies, is as much as I enjoy them and have a lot of fun with them, I miss the classic like Spider-Man just swinging around New York City.
I agree. Kind of that's what, because I said I feel like right when we finished, I was like, he's going back to his roots. Like that's gonna be true Spider-Man now.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw I forget which review it was, but one of the reviews I watched was like, so it turns out that this trilogy ended up being they skipped the origin story because everyone knows it and just like threw everyone into it, but it ends up that this trilogy is actually an origin story for now the new Spider-Man. So like they skipped the origin story, but this is actually an origin story for what now will be Spider-Man. And I totally agree with that. I think it's a really good way of doing it, is like, because I feel like that's been some people's complaints, is like, as much as it's awesome to see him in the MCU, it's still very detached from like classic Spider-Man that we know. So it's cool that we got to have those moments of him teaming up with the Avengers and all that kind of stuff. But now we're just going to get like he's on his own and he's got to figure it all out himself. Because that's what Spider-Man and Peter Parker are supposed to be, is a guy who just wants to do the right thing but just can't seem to balance it all.
Right. Right.
So I'm really excited about that going forwards. And then did you appreciate and like the fact that in the post-credit scene, with it being the Multiverse of Madness setup, that it was, rather than like a scene setup, it was more of like a teaser trailer for the next movie? Because I really like that, but I don't know if everyone would have liked that.
I thought that was interesting.
I really liked it because I felt like it's a cool like reward for going to see the movie in the theater, where like we've gotten so used to just getting like, here's a 30-second or minute-long scene, kind of like, here's a little tease of what's going to come. Instead, it's like, here's some actual footage of the next movie that nobody has seen before. So it's like rewarding you for being some of the first people to go see the movie. I think one of the older MCU movies did it, maybe teasing some Avengers footage for the first time or something.
I think you're right.
Was
I think
it Captain America?
It was Captain America when he was like hitting the punching bag. And it was
they actually like showed footage from Avengers.
So that was really cool. Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, I did like the trailer. The only reason I didn't like the trailer per se was because like I said, I really wanted to know, not that it definitely answered it, that he was kind of like going back to his roots, but I like really wanted like a definitive answer of where he was going next. And I was just hoping for an end credit scene with
it's
that.
kind of like very open-ended. Where like usually the end credit scene is like, okay, we enjoyed all this, now here's what's next with this character. Like, I can understand a complaint of being like, well, this is a Spider-Man movie, why are we promoting the next Doctor Strange movie in a Spider-Man movie? Where like I can see that kind of complaint.
But I would say that by having them show the next Doctor Strange trailer at the end credit scene, it's clarifying and saying Spider-Man will still be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He still will be a part of that. And I think it's just saying that we're going to flip to the next chapter for him because we're going into the next phases. Because I mean, they're going to have like the Fantastic Four. They're going to have
Fantastic Four, the X-Men, like all these different things are coming.
So it's going to be like Tom Holland was supposed to be the next phase and evolution for Marvel, and they so now they're saying, okay, we're closing the chapter that everyone forgot who he was before, and now it's the newer, better version.
Now we're where he should be, kind of thing.
Of where he should be and where he's going to go forward. So I would say that would clarify that. And then I felt like the reason they didn't specifically have an end credit scene with him was because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Marvel and Sony are still, or Disney and Sony are still fighting over different rights with Spider-Man. With stuff going forward, so now it kind of leaves it open that whether each place wants to use him for whatever movies would benefit them, it kind of leaves it open that he can go to either one because it's his traditional Spider-Man now.
Yeah, I think he can go either way, but as far as I've heard so far from both, I don't know any of the Sony executives' names, but any of them and Kevin Feige, because I think Kevin Feige even just announced yesterday that they're already talking about where they'll go next with Spider-Man within MCU. So
I mean, I know they're going to work it out. They always negotiate some kind of deal.
It's like, as much as there's drama about it, like, you know, a couple of years ago when everyone thought it was just like, forget it, it's done. And everyone just thought, wow, I guess it's just like impossible to ever finish a Spider-Man franchise.
I know.
Like, it's like, if you look at how lucrative the Spider-Man movies have been so far, and I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'm sure they're up by about now, the weekend numbers for this movie. I'm sure they're well over 200 million, probably, because that's what the predictions were. Like,
well, I had sent lucrative. It was like $50 million Thursday night,
just opening night. So it's too lucrative an opportunity for them to be like, forget it, we're done. Like, they're gonna work it out. It's like, at the end of the day, it's business, and if they can all make money off of this, they're gonna figure something.
So that, I felt like that's the reason why they didn't have an end credit scene with Spider-Man, was because they're like, they need him to be flexible to be able to go both ways and have it work for both of their characters. So I would say the interesting thing going forward would it be if it's the same actor, is it the same universe? For the two companies, which I would think it would be. That would make the most sense.
I would think so.
Because I would agree with you again that like financially it wouldn't make sense to have the same actor and the same Spider-Man, but yet it's two different storylines for depending on which company. Like I feel like that would just kill the fan base. So
yeah. Well, then didn't you love Elektra's line of "There's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere"? I was like, yes, there is, and we better see him live action sometime soon.
Yeah. I mean, there was so many little like one-liners like that you're like, yeah, Miles Morales is gonna come into play, and there's just gonna be there's gonna be more to it. Like we said, like we believe that Ned will have some kind of like influence going forward because I think they kind of hinted to that in the was it Shang-Chi? I'm trying to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, Shang-Chi.
That they had who was the woman in that movie? I can't think of her.
Awkwafina's the actress.
Yes.
I think her name's Kate.
Yeah. So they had her go with him at the end, which they're saying like, oh, there's more to her than what they were trying to lead on. And I think it's kind of the same thing with this, that they're like, Ned is just his man in the chair or whatever.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing that like, oh, he could be more, like, oh, he could have these, abilities and whatnot. Because like, I mean, yeah, they forgot who Peter Parker was, but they had to have like woken up or whatever you want to say, and they were still on like the Statue of Liberty Island. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah,
kind of thing. It's not like they forgot after they got back home.
He saw the Band-Aid on Zendaya's face of like, oh yeah, she was still there. She probably was just like, what am I doing up here?
Yeah, that's what I was like. I would love to have had the camera, like they should have done a scene of them like, how did I get here or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing when you were talking, it reminded me that another thing I love about this movie, I know we keep remembering things that we love about the movie, is another complaint I've kind of agreed with for these movies so far is it's never just Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man Homecoming, you got Iron Man. He's kind of there as a mentor. And then in Far From Home, you got Nick Fury, who isn't really Nick Fury, but, the character of Nick Fury is portrayed. And then in this movie, everyone was worried there was going to be like, oh, right, now he's got Doctor Strange babysitting him for this movie. But I really liked that, like, Doctor Strange is in the first 20, 25 minutes of the movie, and then he's gone until, like, halfway through the final confrontation. I'm like,
Tom Holland was
great.
Like...
He's actually Spider-Man. Like, he's on his own, struggling. Yeah, and he actually outsmarted him, which is awesome. It's like, oh, I know geometry.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I can just leave you in the mirror dimension. Like,
yeah, he's like, I'll just leave you here. So I love that, too, that he actually, like, as much as Doctor Strange is more powerful than him, he can still be outsmarted.
Yeah.
So I really liked that.
So,
and then what was the other thing I was gonna say? We talked. You were saying there was like little callbacks and random lines and stuff like that. It was funny. I told Josiah last night, right around, we saw the show at 6:45. So I texted him at like 6:40 and was like, "Hey, we got our seats. It's about to start." And then right around 9:30, he texted me and he's like, "Hey, I've been keeping track of time or doing the math or whatever, and I think it should be about over. So what did you think of the movie?" And I just texted him back. I said, I'm something of a scientist myself. That was like my favorite like callback line from the movie. I was like, oh, I love Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
His Green Goblin character, because that's like a meme too of I'm something of a scientist myself. Yeah. I love that line. So I thought that was a great response to his text.
Yeah. So, and then I'll be interested to see what it will be going forward, because they introduced the multiverse and then they like close the streams. So it's like, okay,
I know.
So
part of me was like, no, like let's actually get it here. Like, it's like ever since WandaVision, where they've like been like multiverse, but then they're like not really. And then like Loki, they're like multiverse, but not really. And even as like multiverse, but not really. So it's like they have fully acknowledged it and used it in multiple projects, but it's like, just get everyone here. Let's just do it.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously with Loki, they're introducing is it Kang the Conqueror or
Kang the Conqueror. Yeah. I don't know if he's gonna be necessarily the next Thanos, but it sounds like he'll at least be like the next Loki of like a recurring villain throughout movies and stuff like that.
So I think that was mainly to introduce that character. But yeah, I totally agree with you that they keep like almost taunting us in a way, like like you keep flashing us with, oh, this could be a possibility. No, not yet. Like,
I mean, I guess technically Loki wasn't like not really, because they're like, no, it's here. There's like all these different realities, but it's like we haven't quite gotten like the full embrace of crossing all this stuff over. We got like, here's a little crossover here, here's a little crossover here, but it's not like here's everything. Which I understand that they want to like ease us into it, because like we said, there's the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, like all that stuff is still coming down the road. So
Right.
I understand like wanting to show some restraint, but at the same time, like fans are ready.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do going forward, because they have said it's going to be like a new Marvel, new MCU kind of direction going forward.
Right. Yeah,
So
I'm excited about that. So as I know we haven't gotten to the point where we can probably give it a quantifiable review yet, but has it topped your Free Guy of being your favorite movie of the year?
It did top. It was funny because like when we're driving back, because I went with Andrea and then I went with one of my buddies, Nick, to go see the movie, and we were recalling all the movies that came out this year, and because there was so many movies that were like home releases, I kind of forgot how many movies came out this year. So I'm like, oh yeah, I was like, I think I can make like a top 3 this year, and then I was like, oh, maybe like a top 5, and I'm like, no, I could probably make a top 10 with everything that, because I just kept forgetting how many movies like came out this year.
Yeah.
Because of all the home releases that we had. But yes, it did top my my Free Guy. I would say it's probably my favorite movie this year, just because of all like the nostalgia, like you said. It kind of
all that it did. Yeah,
it kind of like once you play into that, I think you kind of,
well, and it's
because
so cool that like it played the nostalgia card, but it wasn't like a cheap card. Like they genuinely did it and did it well.
Well, and then they had, like you said, they had closure to those other characters. So it's not like they just used them to be like, get their, and they didn't put those like other
they didn't
Spider-Man
just give
in the
them a
trailers.
paycheck and have them be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, like they didn't use it for marketing or anything like that. They didn't want you to know that they were in it, and then they actually had their own character arc because you already knew how they were in their previous movies. So I would say, so it topped Free Guy for me. I would say Spider-Man and Free Guy are probably my top 2 if I can think of all the movies that I watched this year. New movies that I watched this year. Dune would have been there if I could see part 2, but I can't put those in my.
You gotta wait a couple of years.
Yeah, but I mean, it really was well done. The musical score was brilliant when they had the different like houses, like they had the House of Atreides.
The different
and then they had
stuff like
they
that.
had
House
the
Harkonnen and all that.
Duncan had his own themes every time he. So I mean, they did it really, really good job. But to me, it's not a complete story, so I can't put it in my
definitely.
top 10.
I can definitely agree that it's not a complete story. But,
which it's not trying to be, because they say there's part 2 coming.
And that's what's awesome.
So it's a really well done movie, and I can appreciate it for everything that's gone into it. But I can't fairly put it in my top 10, because to me, I mean, just like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, like all those, like all 3 of them is the movie for me. It's not individually. Each one is its own movie.
Yeah, when you talk about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, you don't just more specifically Lord of the Rings, because I guess the Hobbit movies, but they're not quite on that same caliber.
Yeah.
They definitely are more unified. They are a unified story, but it's very specifically Lord of the Rings. Whenever I tell people Lord of the Rings, I mean all 10 hours. Or if you're talking an extended version, I mean all 10 hours. I consider like a 12-hour movie. So like, people, what's your favorite movie of all time? Lord of the Rings. Which one? Lord of the Rings. It's one movie. It's very much a cohesive story. So I totally understand the whole part 1, part 2 thing, because it very much will be a part 1, part 2 being a complete story. And then I think he wants to do the second book as the third movie and do a trilogy out of them. So maybe we'll end up doing another live stream talking about like our favorite movies, because I'm going to do a video of like my top 10 favorite movies of the year. But after that, maybe we'll do like another live stream where we talk about some of our favorite movies and TV shows of the year.
Yeah. Because in my opinion, I would say that Far From Home almost gets better once you see this movie, because it kind of like it completes, because again, it kind of left it pretty open at the end of Far From Home. Like, Peter
like,
Parker is Spider-Man, and you're like, what? So because there was some like I would say not as great parts in that movie. Obviously part of it being you either liked it or you didn't.
It kind of rehashed a number of things from Homecoming, of like, oh good, another villain who hates Tony Stark and blames it on Spider-Man. That kind of thing.
So, but I would say it gets like, it kind of just ties it all in with this. So and then obviously having J.K. Simmons in it was great.
He was great. He was definitely, It was so good to see him as Jameson again, because you can just tell he loves playing that character so much.
Yeah.
And I even saw I didn't read the whole article, but there was one I saw in my newsfeed last night or this morning that said Willem Dafoe said he would only be in the movie if it was more than a cameo. Like, he didn't want it to just be like, oh my gosh, it's Green Goblin for one scene or something like that, and then he's gone. Like, he said he would only be in it if he was an actual character. So I just love that they actually like made them characters. Like, they could have easily just been like, write all the villains paychecks and they can come in and pop in for a scene, and write all the Spider-Man paychecks and they can pop in for a scene and we'll be all good. But no, they actually made all of them characters, and they all went through like journeys themselves.
And I appreciated that they brought the Green Goblin in right at the beginning of the movie, and you're watching the trailer, because I mean, I watched I think 1 or 2 trailers, and then I was like, okay, I'm not watching anything else. So I obviously knew some of the villains that were going to be in it. And so from the trailer, based off of that, you're like, okay, he's going to fight Doc Ock, and then he's going to like immobilize him, and then he's going to go fight the Green Goblin, or he'll fight both of them at the same time on the bridge. And then they're like, nope. And Doctor Strange just brings him through a circle, and then you don't get that, and you don't get that fight sequence until what is it, like halfway through the movie when he's fighting him in the
pretty much
Happy's apartment, and then you really get it at the end. And again, like Josiah was saying, I kind of forgot how strong the Green Goblin was.
Oh yeah, and it was such a good performance too. Like, he was all over it.
Yeah.
Were you counting at any point in the movie to see if we were getting up to 6 for a Sinister Six?
I did not, solely because unfortunately Ronnie had told us that all 6
that it wasn't.
Yeah. So which I kind of appreciated, because you want the Sinister Six to face the sole Spider-Man. Like, you don't want it to be that the only reason he beat the Sinister Six was because there was 3 of them. Yeah.
Right, because it's supposed to be too much, but still he finds a way, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I almost thought one of the post-credit scenes would be revealing the Mysterio's actually alive, because despite what Far From Home showed us, I still think he's secretly alive.
Yeah,
it's if he had a plan to reveal Peter Parker's identity, he had a contingency for making it look like he died or something like that. So, but if he was in it, that was all they needed to hit 6, because they had 5. Like, when they were going into Happy's apartment and they're passing the security camera, I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh man, we're so close. Because I was like so overwhelmed with everything that had happened at that point. I was like, okay, wait, how many of them are there? Because are we at the Sinister Six or not yet?
I think they very intentionally did not pull any more
I think so too.
people from the multiverse, because they didn't want to be. Because if they did, then they would have had to be like 7 or 8 of them, because they would not have done 6. I feel like.
But because you and I were, I think we were talking with Josiah before we went live, of the silhouettes that you see right before they close the gate up into the multiverse. Of like, the main one I saw was Rhino, so I saw the Rhino one that would have been from Amazing Spider-Man, and I think someone said they saw Scorpion. Someone said they saw.
I saw the Watcher.
Yeah, you said you saw the Watcher, so that's a cool one, because he's not necessarily like a villain, but it makes sense that he would be peering in and being like, what's going on over here? Because he just kind of like sits back and watches. So
well, and I feel like they showed the Watcher in one of those like stream things, because like we said, at the very end credit scene, they had the trailer for the next movie, and the evil version of Doctor Strange, or whatever, the one that absorbed all those beings and monsters, was from that What If series. So they're saying like, oh, the Watcher's looking over, and then they're like, okay, this is what's coming next with that. So but yeah. So
any other final thoughts? I know technically you could really talk about this movie for hours, but I don't want it to get to the point where we're meandering.
Trying to think.
I'm just happy it was everything we hoped it would be. Like, as much as we kind of knew it based on leaks and stuff like that, I'm glad it actually was, and it was done really well, and it actually like embraced everything that was the history of Spider-Man, while at the same time doing its own thing. One thing I did want to say, have you ever heard the joke? I don't know if it's a true story or not, but the story that I've heard with James Cameron pitching the sequel to Alien is when he went to the studio, he wrote the word alien up on like the chalkboard or the whiteboard, and then put an S after it, and then put the lines to make it a dollar sign afterwards. And that's how he pitched the sequel to the studio. I was like, man, they should have done that with this movie. They should have had someone walk up to the board, write Spider-Man, and then put S and just do Spider-Man's
Yeah.
with a $sign, because you know that's what's going to bring people out to bring back all the Spider-Men together. So I was thinking about that last night, like on the way home or laying in bed. I was like, they should have called it Spider-Man's.
Yeah.
That would have been funny.
Yeah, it would have. But then you would have known. So then.
Yeah, then you would have known. Yeah. I'm curious if now, because sometimes, I don't know, I'm trying to remember if any Marvel movies specifically did it, but I know a number of movies after that initial weekend, maybe even 2 weeks, they just like go full spoilers in their marketing and stuff like that, just to like bring people back, or even the people who have held off until that point, just to be like, oh my gosh, it's actually happening. Like, let's just do it, kind of thing. So I'm curious if over the next week or so, we're going to get new like TV spots and YouTube trailers and stuff that are actually going to show them in it.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I said to my buddy Nick when we were leaving, I said it's gotta stink to put that much work into the movie and then you can't go to like the red carpet event like Tobey Maguire or
like they didn't do any press or interviews.
Or Andrew Garfield. Like, they couldn't do anything. I mean, obviously they didn't interviews, but it was from the perspective of we're not in it. Sorry to disappoint. We're not in it.
Yeah, well, and Andrew Garfield was doing press for his new musical Tick Tick Boom, and people just asked him Spider-Man questions. So I was like, I mean, I guess it's kind of nice because if you're someone who doesn't like press, you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, but I mean, and then I said
it'd be so really cool to bring like all three of them together for an interview now and be like, now that it's actually happened, like let's just like talk about it, kind of thing,
like. But I was like, that's got to be weird to like have so much secrecy. Like, how many movies can you say you could be in that you would have that much secrecy behind like what is actually happening for the movie? Because most of the most movies in Hollywood are this actor's in it, so then you're like, oh, I want to go see this because this actor's in it. But this whole marketing was like, no, we're gonna keep it as quiet and private as possible because we don't want you to know what's in it. So it's almost like the like reverse, like opposite of what they would normally do. Which was kind of cool. So
there's one thought I had at the end of the movie is I was like, man, I feel bad for people like years from now, like just think of like our future kids and stuff like that, who like there's going to be no mystery or surprise to all this kind of stuff. Like looking back on like Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, where they brought back like everyone from the MCU, and now this one, like other universes are brought in. It's like not necessarily that I feel bad for them, but it's like no one's ever going to be able to experience this movie the way that we experienced it here, right now. So it's like so cool when you experience a movie like that and you're like, there's never going to be something like this ever again, like for this like property at least.
Because what are we going to do? Make our kids wait like a year between Infinity War and Endgame? Never tell like that's not going to happen. So that's definitely true. Which is cool because like for stuff like that we enjoy, like Star Wars and stuff like that, we were never able to have. Obviously with the newer stuff, but now with the older stuff, we were never able to truly have that experience that. We don't really know what
opening night for Star Wars, like Dad when he went to go see Star Wars 10 times when it was in theaters, like we're never gonna get that.
So like that's
not
really
knowing
cool.
Not knowing a world without Star Wars kind of thing. Not knowing a world without the MCU, like there's never gonna be a time or place for that again, at least in this multiverse.
I agree. So I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, it's kind of funny because now like I have my like display specific section for the MCU movies, and I always like look over at it and I'm like, I wonder with like at what point do I divide it into the Infinity Saga and then like after that, because what are you gonna do? Watch like you're like, all right, let's watch the
50 movies.
50 movies. Like I'm not gonna have time to watch 50 movies.
And
remember the first
25 movies in 12 years. Like in another 12 years we have 25 more movies. Like let's watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, see you in a year.
I have like if I get we have, is it 20?
Especially with all the
25
TV shows
movies
and stuff.
So
like
if you have
25 or 26 movies.
So like if they have 100 movies and I don't know, like I keep on track of what I'm collecting, and I get like 1,000 movies or something like that. It'll be like a 10th of the movies I own will just be Marvel movies.
MCU.
Like that's insane.
Yeah.
So like it'll be interesting to see kind of like what goes forward, and then like how you're gonna break it up to watch it. You're like, okay, so we can watch the Infinity Saga, or okay, we can go watch
Phase 4 forwards or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
the next saga is going to be or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, even if you think about just adding the MCUs and shows into the mix, like there's already five series, I think, and they're at least 6 hours each.
Yeah, I mean, I
to
think
watch through all of them. Like that probably doubled the length of.
I was just saying, it literally the show is probably literally doubled the amount, and that was the kind of like unique thing with like Marvel was that you could go and watch. I mean, it's 20 something movies, but you can still watch it in what, like, I don't know. I mean, being realistic, you can probably watch
a couple
it like,
weeks or something like that. Yeah.
I was gonna say 2 months, but yeah.
A month or two. If you were really passionate about it, I know, there was some people who were like, I'm gonna watch it all in the last week or something like that.
Yeah. So
watching 2 or 3 movies a day.
Right. But then you have like TV series and you're like, well, this is like, I don't know, a couple hundred hours. How am I going to watch this?
Yeah.
So, and it's going to be like the same thing with the movies. And then that's the other thing that was unique with it was, or not really unique, but was kind of nice, but like, I don't know how to say it better, but was that you could just watch the movies and just go forward. But now you're like, okay, I can watch these set of movies and then
we got to break from movies. Now we got to watch a show, then back into the movie.
Yeah. So I think that's really the only like complicated part of them integrating the shows with the movies was that it is cool that it's the same universe and they can kind of do better storytelling through that because they have more time for character development within the TV shows. But part of it almost would have been kind of nice if it was like a different universe.
They actually wrap it up in a bow or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's tough because as much as we're excited about Phase 4 and what's going next, the ending of Phase 3 is really complicated because technically it ends at Avengers Endgame, but the last Phase 3 movie is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is kind of an epilogue to the Infinity Saga.
Exactly.
And then the first movie in Phase 4 actually takes place right after Civil War, which is back in like Phase 2. So it's like really complicated how mixed up it is because it's like, yes, it ends here, but the first couple movies in the next kind of really rely on what was before. So it's like really weird.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like, what? Yeah. But I mean, we're going to watch it.
We'll just keep buying them. We'll keep watching them. We'll keep buying them.
So, I mean, I feel bad for my kids when they want to collect all of them because, I mean, I started collecting them, I think, when there was like 15 of them, and it took me like a year because I didn't want to blow through. Because it's like 20, 25 bucks a movie. You're not going to spend, you're not going to buy all of them at once. And then you're not going to buy multiple, like too many a month or whatever. So I buy like 1 or 2 a month. So like and then obviously as you're buying them, they're coming out with new ones. And especially now, like when they first started coming out with them.
Ones yet.
Yeah, well, that's like I'm looking over and I'm like,
I'm already 3 movies behind now because I don't have Black Widow, I don't have Eternals, which Eternals isn't out yet, and I don't have Shang-Chi, and now Spider-Man's out. So I'm 4 movies behind technically.
Exactly. So I'm like, oh man, so that's kind of like it's tricky because when they first started coming out, if you started collecting them, they did like 1 or 2 a year, right? And then now they're doing like what 3 or 4 a year or something like that.
3 or 4 a year,
yeah. And on top of that, they're doing the TV show, so it's like.
I guess it's almost a good thing we don't get the TV shows on physical. No, because they're Disney
I don't think
exclusive.
They're doing physical.
As much as it sucks for like, yes, it kind of leaves gaps in the collection, but at the same time, it's like, well, those would probably be like $40 each. So.
Yeah, I know. So it's so I'm happy going forward that I'm like, okay, if they come out with like 3 or 4 movies a year, I can like that's fine. I can just do that every quarter or whatever. Just go. Because obviously it's not like Marvel's movies are not the only movies we're buying. So you're not gonna like solely use your movie budget for all the Marvel movies that are coming
I'm
out.
hoping next time I go to like one of our favorite movie stores, like the Mega Replay near you or the Huber Heights one over in the Dayton area, I'm hoping they might have like Black Widow for $10-15 or something like that. Well, because one of the ones that have been out for a little while, so I want to like wait a little while and then maybe see if I can get like Black Widow and Shang-Chi. And then catch back up that way because you can get them so much cheaper used.
Well, and that's like I do appreciate the way they are going forward because I felt like for a time with some of the Marvel stuff, it almost felt like redundant and repetitive. So then it was like, am I just collecting these movies because it's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and not because I enjoy the movie? Like Captain Marvel, like that's one movie I can say that comes to the top of my like front of my head every time I think about it. That I didn't love the movie, but it's like. One movie that I bought because I'm like I have to have the collection of it.
Have to have a collection,
yeah. So I think that's really the only one that I can think of off the top of my head that I didn't love from Marvel. Pretty much, I think. Other than that, I do
all the rest you like them, or even more. You either like or really like or love.
Yeah. So, but that's one movie I knew when I was buying it. I'm like, I'm not paying full price for that movie because I didn't love that movie. So I'm getting this movie to complete the collection.
Yeah,
but
just to complete it. Yeah.
Yeah, like that'll be one that I'll watch when I go through and watch the whole series. But if I just went and picked one out of random to watch, that's
you wouldn't
not going to be.
You wouldn't be like, let's watch a Marvel movie and pull out Captain Marvel.
Yeah. So
yeah. I like Captain Marvel. I definitely understand it has problems, but I think I really like the chemistry with her and Fury enough that makes it a really enjoyable movie for me. I definitely don't think it's anywhere near like the top half of the MCU or anything like that, but I do have fun with it.
Yeah. So I should rewatch it though because I haven't seen it. I think I've seen it once, maybe twice. So I should rewatch it to see.
I've seen it like 3 times. I think 3 or 4 times. I think I saw it twice in theaters because I think you and I went to go see it with Joe when we were in Connecticut once, and then like 2 days later I went to go see it with Barbie and her sister.
Yeah,
because they wanted to see it too.
So.
Alrighty, well, we'll wrap up the stream here before we meander into regular MCU talk since this is supposed to be a Spider-Man stream.
That
I was like, I'll let
dangerous.
it go for a little bit, but I don't want to go too far. So we'll wrap the stream up here. Thank you for everyone who watched live and for anyone who caught it on the replay. I'll be sure to share this because it was kind of an impromptu live stream. So I'll be sure to share it on Instagram and my YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm sure you'll put it out there as well. So have fun catching it on the replay for anyone who comes back and watches it. But thanks for joining. We'll definitely have to do another stream. I was hoping you'd do it because I know you get kind of nervous about camera stuff, but you had great on-screen chemistry with me. So thank you.
Yeah, I would hope so after 23 years, right? So
yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.